Hi. So I've just listened to an interesting video. It's an audio recording um, of a conversation between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Now, I want to prefix this video with a few points. I rarely talk about celebrity stories. I think they're more for the realm of TMZ, which I think is trash. But I don't talk much about celebrity relationships. It doesn't really interest me, and I think that it's so rife for a whole he said, she said type situation. However, this does matter because it's not just about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I mean, it's about them, but I think it covers some wider problems, which I'll address later in the video. But just a disclaimer, I'm not trying to say in this video that because of my perception of what I've just heard and because of my thoughts on the case that I know everything. Obviously, I don't. So I'm not going to say Johnny Depp's entirely innocent and she's entirely wrong. I don't know that for a fact. And I think with these sort of cases, people need to be very careful not to just assume they know everything, um, because we don't. So, bit of context here. Johnny Depp is suing the Sun newspaper for a 2018 article which labelled him a wife beater, which he strenuously denies. So that's why this has all come up um, in the media again. Johnny Depp, of course, has had quite a turbulent few years. Him and Amber Heard that had that legal situation in Australia when they illegally brought dogs into the country, and there was the whole situation where they had to make a grovelling apology to the Australian authorities. Um, the way the press has been covering Johnny Depp of late has been pretty cynical and negative. I've got two articles in front of me by the Daily Mail and the Daily Mirror, um, and they refer to. I'll come, by the way, to the audio video in a minute because it's extremely important. But they're not exactly portraying Depp in a positive light. For example, the Daily Mail has several photographs that show a table, and it shows a pint of whiskey. It shows some lines of cocaine. It basically comes across as a junkie, right? It's not very flattering. It's also, by the way, illegal. Cocaine is a Class A drug, so that's something that I never. I don't like saying that. I don't like seeing it's almost a celebrity cliche. People doing lines of cocaine and stuff. I'm not going to defend that. When it comes to drugs, I sort of take the view that, rich, famous people doing drugs are fueling drug wars. So I'm quite critical of that. I don't like to see it. And, that's clearly something he needs to address. He needs to get into rehab. He needs to deal with that. But that in itself is no evidence that he is there for a wife beater. It's not. Um, And it seems to me that the Daily Mail is trying to sort of converge two different things together, almost like a character assassination. That is to say, because he obviously does have drink and drug problems, which he needs to address, somehow that ties in. I mean, they're not saying in the reports, oh, this is why he's a wife beater, but they're clearly portraying him in a pretty negative light. Um, Well, would we judge a woman who is the victim of domestic abuse if she became an alcoholic? And it's got me thinking now, maybe he's having these problems, which he needs to address, because of what this woman has done to him, potentially. Potentially. Um, Drive anyone over the edge when hear some of the details of the things that have been going on, or at least when you listen to the audio. Yeah, this audio has been posted by a user called Incredibly Average. I've actually asked him how he came about the audio. I'm interested in that side of things. he didn't explain that, and no one in the comments have explained that how he got his hands on this. But it's about an hour long, and it's a conversation between Depp and Heard, and it really, really does cast another light on the claims that she has made that he is a domestic abuser, a very different light. And I would urge people to listen to it the whole way through. This isn't about celebrity gossip. It gets into a deeper issue of how men are portrayed in these situations. Um, I'm not going to talk about every nuance of the audio. Like I said, it's an hour long, but there is a few points that stand out. And feel free to pause this, watch the whole audio, come back to this video, whatever. But basically, they're talking about the state of the relationship. The audio is from, I understand, May 2016, before they finalised the divorce, right? That's the date, May 2016. Um, and there's a repeated theme in this where Amber Heard keeps accusing Johnny Depp of running away and not wanting to ever sort anything out. That's her main narrative. He keeps running away. She calls him a coward. She says he never wants to deal with anything. And Depp says that he goes away because he wants to de escalate the situation. Now, this immediately is quite striking because you would think that a woman who is living in fear, who is a victim of domestic abuse, would want to be out of that situation. You'd think that she would be scared of her abuser. That would be a natural and understandable reaction. But she is the one, by her own admission in this audio, that wants to keep it going, that wants to, and she even said several times, I cannot guarantee that there won't be violence. So she accuses him of not wanting to confront the situation. Well, I can understand that might be a bit frustrating if you're wanting to sort things out in a relationship, but practically, if both parties involved are angry, it seems to me that Depp is taking the mature approach by walking away to de-escalate, at least for a while, as he put towards the end of the audio, even for an hour. I could sort of understand her point if it was like he went away for 2 days and just didn't say anything. I am a believer in talking through things, but there is a dynamic here about female violence that gets overlooked, and she hasn't denied it in the audio. There's one point early on, she said her retort was, You push me too. So the obvious conclusion here is she responded to violence first. Now, the Daily Mail has a picture of a bruise on her arm. What they haven't shown, I don't know if the paper's from a few days ago, a new photograph has emerged. I don't know what the date is, but it shows Johnny Depp with quite a serious bruise on his face, apparently from her throwing a phone at him. And there's a lot of videos going around. This one has almost 3 million views, so clearly there's a lot of interest in this, which is not surprising. I mean, Johnny Depp would be one of the most famous actors in the world. Um, Amber Heard, far less well known. In fact, I suspect most people know of Amber Heard simply through Johnny Depp. She's a lot younger than him, so her filmography it's not as extensive. Um, but that to me is quite striking that she is openly admitting to having a very bad temper. Throughout the audio, Depp seems a lot calmer. He's a bit defensive at points, but she seems to have a quick temper. Something that's quite striking if you listen to the audio. And they end up with a sort of compromise where they sort of say, well, she's kind of promising not to react the way she does. But what's interesting about her attitude is she uses the typical narrative that a lot of abusers do, male abusers as well, of turning it around and making the victim feel guilty. And she lapses between getting very angry at several points to being almost tearful at other points. Strikes me as incredibly manipulative. So she's sort of making out that she's in this desperate situation where, oh, you made me be violent. And that's classic. That's a classic abuser sort of strategy, to put it on to project it onto the victim. Um, like I only done this because you made me. At several points she says, "Oh, I'm only a human being. That's why I lashed out." Now imagine if that excuse was used by violent men. Oh, I'm only human. She made me do it. Now Depp at several points admits that he does walk away, but he does it, and he's very upfront about this because he wants to de-escalate the violent situation. And by the way, at one point he admits that he did push her back, so he's being upfront about that. But when it comes to the issue of her violence, she tries to change the subject. Um, there's another aspect of this case which I think is extremely important, um, and that is that two of Johnny Depp's ex-wives, Winona Ryder and Penelope Cruz, who are of course well known themselves, have defended him. They have said that the sort of way that Heard is portraying him is not what they recognise. And this is interesting because, as I understand it, Johnny Depp ended the relationship with them. So, if this was a violent man we're talking about, if he was controlling, if he was abusive of partners, you'd think there would be a trajectory. You'd think other women would come forward and say, well, yes, that was also my experience. But they haven't. They're defending him. Apparently, in the Fantastic Beasts film, which I think was 2016, J.K. Rowling actually lobbied for Johnny Depp to get a role in that film. Now, that's significant because J.K. Rowling has herself been a domestic abuse survivor. She recently gave testimony about this. So, if she, as a woman who has been through this, feels confident in lobbying for Johnny Depp, surely that's quite revealing. Would a woman who has been a survivor of domestic abuse lobby for a man who had a reputation as a wife beater? That makes no sense. No sense whatsoever. And, I don't believe in judging people by the court of public opinion. I think the only thing that matters is the facts. So my position is not, well, let's support Johnny Depp because he's the A-list actor and she's not as well known. And I would always make that point. People shouldn't support Johnny Depp just because they like him as an actor or because they're a Johnny Depp fan. I remember actually, and I've been thinking a bit about this. I had a manager once, and she was quite an outspoken feminist. She wore her heart on her sleeve with that. I got on okay with her, but her politics were pretty obvious. Interesting thing, she was also a big Johnny Depp fan. She had his poster all over her office. She was a big Johnny Depp fan. So I mean, we haven't kept in touch, but I wonder what she would think of this. But this brings me to a wider point. It goes beyond Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And it is about double standards and about how, for example, the Me Too campaign will absolutely, without question, endorse a woman like this without any fact checking, without any sort of need to say, well, are we really sure that she's telling the truth? This absurd and dangerous mantra, believe all women, which Joe Biden has now found himself on the wrong end of because he endorsed it and now he's being accused. It's dangerous. You cannot have in any court of law a situation where the defendant is prejudiced by, well, he must be lying because, the accuser's a woman. So she must be telling the truth. Every case must be dealt with in its own merit. Um, I mean, there's been other high profile cases. A decade ago, of course, it was Mel Gibson. Now, in the Mel Gibson case, I think the audio was quite revealing, and I think I was more critical of Mel Gibson in that situation. My logic was, or my understanding of that was, okay, well, the Russian girlfriend, I forget her name now, but she may have been a gold digger, but Gibson wasn't helping himself by his, blatant threats in the audio. This is very different. So, we can't just lump every case together. I do think there's big differences between the two cases. Why this was recorded, whether this was being recorded, if it's being recorded by Amber Heard, that's quite incredible. If this is what she says in a recording, what on earth is she going to say when it's not recording? In other words, if she If she sanctioned the recording, if it was her idea, then she obviously feels whatever she's saying will make her look like the victim, except that was misguided. Because most people are looking at this and thinking she comes across as incredibly manipulative. Certainly doesn't come across as a woman who is frightened or, frightened of abuse from a violent man. She seems to be the one that's getting angry. She seems to be the one that's pushing the arguments. Now, obviously, we're not there all the time. It may well be that Johnny Depp also has a quick temper, and it may be that Penelope Cruz and Winona Ryder, they had a better experience, and so they can't know what's happened with Amber Heard. But I do think that with abusers, there is a track record. I think that violent men are unlikely to be violent with just one woman. I think that would be their track record with all the partners. It would seem to me, and I'm no expert, but it would just seem very unusual that they're described as a generous and kind and loving person with other women, then suddenly they become a monster with one woman. That seems hard to believe. Um, by contrast, I understand Amber Heard has had previous problems from assault allegations against her from previous partners. So, without knowing the absolute truth and without wanting to 100% demonize Amber Heard, my gut feeling is she comes across as a very, very manipulative individual based on the audio I've just heard and based on the other information that's available. And I think this might be a case of because Depp has drink and drug problems, it doesn't help his character, his reputation in that sense. But that in itself is not proof of being violent. Someone can have drink and drug problems and they're a tragic wreck. It may well be that she's driven him to it. And that's not an excuse, for using an illegal substance, but that might be the case. Because, a man in this situation, and we've seen this from Me Too, the reason in fact he's suing the son is because it will damage his career. We've seen from Me Too that men who are accused of things, there's immediately calls for them to be dropped from films, from productions, whether they've been found guilty or innocent in the court of law. So production companies are just taking it on themselves. Oh, well, we'll just punish him because we don't want to be associated with him, whether or not he's guilty. And that's one of the main points about Me Too that I've been very critical of. It's basically trial by by allegations alone. It's um, guilty until proven innocent, not innocent until proven guilty. So we've seen this with so many men in Hollywood, and that's not to say that they're all innocent. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there is definitely an imbalance here. By contrast, Amber Heard has literally been described as the model victim by women's magazines. She continues, apparently, she spoke at a women's march event in Los Angeles earlier this year. So, my question to feminists is why is it you are so unquestioning of women? Like, why is it you will just hold them up to be absolutely telling the truth without any sort of sense of, well, we don't know? You just hold them up and say, they're telling the truth. The man he must be abusive if she says that. Like, it's like they're not capable of reasoning that some women do lie. Some women are manipulative. And I think, whatever the truth of this is, and when it all comes out, if it is proven in a court of law, I mean, certainly this audio should be used as evidence for her violent side. Um, if it is proven beyond doubt in a court of law that she has been lying, I don't know what the American equivalent is, but certainly in the UK it would be classed as perverting the course of justice. Not that our legal system is particularly fair in terms of gender accountability. Because time and time and time again, we see women basically got off the hook for things that men would be punished for. And this isn't related, but just as an example, there is a woman from, I think it was Wigan, who, you know, basically caused disruption at 30,000 feet on a flight from Manchester to Antalya. I made a video about this. Um, she avoided a prison sentence, even though she assaulted airline crew, even though she was drunk out of her mind, even though she was behaving in a very reckless and dangerous way. She avoided a custodial sentence because she had a child. She got a fine and a sentence of doing some unpaid community work, but that was it. Now, a single father would not be given the same sort of leniency. So, feminists need to acknowledge when they talk about, oh, powerful men, abuse of power, and that's what the whole basis of Me Too argument. What feminists need to acknowledge is that there is a track record of women getting more lenient treatment than men when it comes to court proceedings. There's another case I can point to, Lavinia Woodward. This was a high-profile case about 3 years ago, I think. I think it was around 2017. She was an Oxford student who stabbed her boyfriend while she was drunk, and the judge, Ian Pringle QC, let her off the hook. She stabbed her boyfriend in the leg, and she was training to be some sort of surgeon. Now, this angered a lot of people, including many women. They said, she doesn't represent women. And this is an important point. There are many, many good women out there who look at the likes of Amber Heard and they think that women like her, you know, do for women what violent men do for men. Like, as a man, I loathe the idea of men being violent towards women, and that's why I was quite critical of the whole Mel Gibson thing because, I mean, the point about that is Gibson didn't defend himself. He knew the evidence was damning. So I think that's very different. And I got angry when I saw other men just defending Gibson for the sake of it. Um, if a woman's a gold digger, then drop her. Get out of that relationship. If there's children involved, then okay, that's going to bring a complex dynamic to it. But with Gibson, he was making explicit threats. What we have with Johnny Depp is allegations that he strenuously denies that are now being contradicted by her rhetoric. Um, the whole thing about drinking drugs, if Depp does anything, I was going to say illegal. Well, taking Class A drugs is illegal, but if he, for example, makes an ass out of himself on a plane or something, that's a different matter. He should face some music for that. But specifically within the context of the allegations that Amber Heard has made, I really think that she comes across as very manipulative. Now, I don't know the full story, so I don't want to outright demonize her and say, oh, she's an evil liar. I don't know. Mm, but there's quite a few videos going around showing audio um, that really shows another side to this. I think if the son, they made a report calling him a wife beater, he's never been convicted of that. He's been charged with it. He's been accused of it. He's never been convicted of it. Therefore, I hope he does win over them because powerful newspapers need to understand they cannot just slander someone like that. And in the case of a high-profile actor, of course, it's going to ruin the reputation. But there has to be more consistent standards. If it is proven that, and I think that audio is pretty implicating, she pretty much admits it herself, that she's violent, then are we going to see calls for her to be dropped from productions? I doubt it, because Me Too will ensure that there is not consistent standards. Me Too is fine with violent women, and women who abuse their position. I mean, another side of this is that I'm thinking about character reputation here. Apparently, Depp made some off-color jokes. For example, he joked about hurting her dog and about setting her on fire. Now, that's not going to help his case. I'll just show you the cover of the Daily Mirror. It's from a few days ago. Um, yeah, that's a tasteless joke. It doesn't exactly help his case. But I don't think that making a tasteless joke is evidence of anything. It's just evidence that it's bad judgment and it is tasteless, and he probably should be making jokes like that. But it isn't evidence that he's actually violent towards women. I think it's a sign that he needs to get a bit more self-control in terms of uh, making jokes like that. But does this look like the face of someone who's? I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but just doesn't strike me as a woman who is terrified of this tyrant who's abusing her. Um, I mean, the way the Mail is reporting its Depp, the monster they have in abbreviations, denies attacking Amber 14 times as his rages took over. I don't know if that means he denied it 14 times or he attacked her 14 times. I'm going to close with some thoughts on this. I'm not saying that Johnny Depp is innocent. I just don't know. I wasn't there. It may well be that there is another side where Johnny Depp is violent, and the audio in itself wouldn't necessarily show the whole story. So it may well be when he's drunk, when he's high on drugs, there is another side to him. Very possible. But it may be a case that actually they're both violent. It may be a case that Depp isn't innocent, but Amber Heard is also not innocent. I just don't buy this thing that she's some innocent little fragile victim. I think that all the indication from that audio that I've just listened to is that she is very manipulative, and by her own admission, she has a quick temper. She said, "Sometimes I just feel so enraged." And she couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't be violent. She's literally admitting it. So I really, really hope that is used as evidence in a court of law if then the allegations turn on her. This needs to be a wake up call that when it's a case of a man's word against a woman's word, everything needs to be looked at. Everything. Because I think with the likes of Me Too, so often it's a case of, well, she's the woman, she's the vulnerable one, she must be telling the truth. And I don't think that is the whole picture. I think there are manipulative women out there, and they know that using the waterworks. I mean, if you look at this audio, she alternates between getting very angry and being tearful. I think that's manipulative. I don't think it's sincere. I think women like that do it so often that they don't even know they're doing it. I've encountered a few women in my life, not in relationships, but um, who have that sort of mindset. And women are very adept at doing it. I'm not talking about all women, obviously, but what I'm saying is it's far easier for a woman to be tearful than a man. If a man got tearful, he would just be called a weak man and unstable. A woman gets tearful, oh, she's vulnerable, she's the victim. So people shouldn't underestimate, how smart manipulative women could be in terms of twisting things. And the reason I'm critical of feminists is they are not open-minded at all on this. They just have the mindset, man versus woman, well, the woman must be right. The woman. That is their mindset. I'm not saying Depp is right because he's a man. I mean, I have criticized Mel Gibson because I think in his case, he was clearly making threats. So I think every case needs to be looked at in its own merit. Anyway, I'll put a link to the video I've just watched. Whoa, already half an hour, but it makes me wonder. Johnny Depp is an A-list actor. How many potentially innocent men have been totally destroyed by lying women? It makes you wonder. We hear about how many women die a week from domestic violence, and that's awful. It needs to be addressed. I think men who brutalize women are the scum of the earth. But how many men have died from suicide? because of false accusations or because of emotional manipulation. I mean, we look at the sort of emotional abuse, for example, over child custody battles, or certain women will use children almost as weapons, which is despicable. Um, so people need to be open-minded about this. I mean, if you're a Johnny Depp fan, don't defend him just because you like his films and you like him. You don't know his personal side, so listen to the audio and judge from that. My gut feeling is Depp probably has some problems with drink and drugs. Maybe sometimes he loses his temper. But my gut feeling on this is she is lying. And I don't know that for a fact. But my gut feeling is she comes across as a very, very manipulative individual. And I think the fact that two of his ex partners have defended him is very important because I don't think that a man who is violent, I don't think that women who were outside the relationship, i.e., they were no longer with him, why would they defend him? That wouldn't make any sense. You can't say, oh, it's because they're frightened, because they're out of the relationship. So I think it points to they they don't think he's capable of it because they know what their experience was. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. And I think for future reference, first, the newspapers should be very careful how they report things. I mean, the Sun should know that you cannot just accuse someone of being a wife beater if they haven't actually been found guilty of that. That's point one. And point two, when feminists make things out that the woman's always right and the man's always wrong, and that's what they do. They're not being open-minded. Um, I'm not saying as a man, always believe men. I'm not saying that for a second. I'm saying we need to know the individual facts of individual cases, which seems surely a reasonable position. Right, I'll put a link to the audio and let me know your thoughts on this.